Welcome back to the Rundown. There was a shouting match at the Oval Office over the weekend in a heated televised confrontation between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump. Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance berated Zelensky on live TV for, quote, gambling with millions of lives and potentially triggering World War III. It was a pretty shocking interaction and shows a shift in U.S. interests, which we already saw earlier in the week when the U.S. voted against a UN resolution calling to reaffirm Ukraine's territorial integrity, which Israel sided with the U.S. and also voted against. This meeting between two leaders certainly highlighted the brewing tensions between Trump and Zelensky, but it could impact Israel's position on the war in Ukraine as well. For more, we're joined now by Dr. Yonatan Freeman from the Government and Politics Department at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, joining us from Beersheba. Thanks for being with us on the Rundown today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Dr. Freeman, this debate, it happened so publicly. Many think that the Trump administration was clearly trying to advance the United States' interests in a public means, but how does this public spat then impact Israel's position on the conflict, as we did already see Israel side with the U.S. when it came to the United Nations General Assembly resolution vote? Are we likely to see more of this unification when it comes to Ukraine going forward?
Well, I think generally speaking, when we talk about the UN, I don't remember one resolution that the United States voted against that Israel ever voted for. So I think, first off, that was in line of historical policy when it comes to the UN. When it comes to the current challenges between Ukraine and the United States, I think that in terms of Israel, I think it paid off that Israel didn't take such a strong pro-Ukrainian or pro-Russian stance during this war. It sought to showcase more neutrality, more behind-the-scenes policy making. And I think that one of the main reasons is because really Israel needs to follow whatever the United States thinks about this war, in particular because of the strong relationship between Jerusalem and Washington.
So with that strong relationship between Jerusalem and Washington, clearly Israel needs their strongest ally, that being the United States. But if the United States is boosting this relationship and partnership with Russia, a country that has not only vocally supported, but also militarily supported Israel's enemies throughout the course of this war, what would that partnership between U.S. and Russia mean for Israel?
Well, I don't think I would call it a partnership. I think it's really a showcase of the reality. The reality is that the United States has given so much to Ukraine for years and has given weapons, has given backing, and there is no end in sight to this war. And on the other hand, there's also fear that if this war continues, this could bring a clash between the Ukraine and NATO, the Russia and NATO because of this war in the Ukraine. And I think that it's also in Israel's interest that this war doesn't expand out of the boundaries of the Ukraine, because in the end, a world war is not just bad news for the United States, it's also bad news for Israel.
It certainly is bad news for Israel and the entire world. Now, as we talk about Trump's spat in the Oval Office, also now European countries condemning this public scene. Trump could be deteriorating some of these ties with European countries. Could that impact Israel's ties, however, with those European countries because of Israel's support for the United States in any way?
Well, again, I don't think there's really a big divide between Europe and the United States when it comes to Ukraine. I think that both sides want the war to end. Both sides want to make sure that the relationship between Europe and America is strong. I don't think that any kind of disagreement between those two powers would necessarily impact Israel's relationship with Europe, which we know that over the years there's been a difference of opinion between Europe and the United States when it comes to Israel, with America taking a more pro-Israel approach on some subjects. But I do think that Israel can really provide another means of mediation. And if you think about Israel and the relationship it has with America and with Russia, I think that Israel is one of those countries in the world that really has the ears of both sides. And I think that even as I speak now, Israel has continued to try to serve as a mediator between the sides.
That's an interesting perspective, Dr. Freeman. And so how else could Israel potentially use this to its advantage, even when it comes to some of these European countries in the EU that might rely on the United States for different defense weapons deals? Could some of those EU countries turn to Israel for different weapons shipments?
Yes, I think we already see it right now. during these few years. We see that there's been increased in agreement between Europe and Israel, Germany, specifically trying to really import the missile defense system that we have over to Germany. And I think that Israel can really provide a lot of maybe mediation between Europe and Russia. If you think about it, I don't know of any other Western leader right now in the world that has such personal experience with dealing with Putin other than Netanyahu. I don't know of any other Western leader right now. So I think there's a lot of ways that Israel can support Europe's quest to bridging the gap between Moscow and Europe. And I think that Israel is doing so as I speak, as I said, during these last few years.
Dr. Yonatan Freeman, interesting developments when it comes to Israel's stake at everything happening in Europe right now. Thanks for joining us on The Rundown.
Thank you very much.